We've got distilleries popping up all over the place at the moment. It's a very exciting time to be a whiskey drinker. But some of those stories are a little bit more interesting than others. Welcome back, Dram Fam, to the Whisky Diary. So this review is going to come in two parts. First, I'm going to talk about a whiskey. The second part, I'm going to talk about why it's more interesting than just the liquid. But anyway, a little over a week ago, I got a message from Vin over at No Nonsense Whiskey with a picture of a bottle of whiskey, and he said, "Isn't this down your neck of the woods?" And it was. He was referring to the Jackton Distillery, which is a new distillery over in Jackton, which is in East Kilbride. That's in like the kind of southern area of Glasgow. I reached out to them and I asked if I could pop down and say hello. I'm super into supporting new distilleries. I'm super into supporting local business anyway. So the two go hand in hand. They're not too far from me. They're only about 20 minutes down the road or so. So I popped down there and tried they have a number of spirits. They make gin and vodka, and two blended malt whiskies. Now this is interesting because it's not their spirit. They're sourcing spirit from elsewhere, blending it in-house, casking it in this instance in an Oloroso cask, and then shipping it under their brand, which is Raer Whiskey. So it's like 2 days later, and while I was editing this, I realised I didn't quite make myself clear. The Jackton Distillery are distilling their own whiskey. They make their own gin, they make their own vodka, and they have been distilling their own spirit and casking it, but it's not ready yet. Obviously, it has to be 3 years old before it can be sold as a whiskey, so that's to come in the future. But anyway, I'm going to whip through the review of this whiskey fairly quickly, because it's not something I would usually review on the channel, but it's important. So anyway, this is the Oloroso Expression blended whiskey from Raer Whiskey, which is made by the Jackton Distillery. It is a blended. It is bottled at 40% ABV. It is a 70 centilitre bottle. It is completely unpeated. Now, it doesn't say otherwise, so we can only infer that it is chill filtered and artificial colour. And it's £35 a bottle directly from the distillery. At the moment, I don't believe that they are in any other retailer, although that's something they're looking into. They are a super new distillery. Probably the first thing to actually point out about this is the bottle is incredible. It's the same shape they kind of carry across all of their other spirits. I love the bottle. Like, the branding is on point. The name, I'm ambivalent towards. I don't mind so much. I can imagine a lot of people. I get the play on words, Raer Whiskey. That's cool. I'm into that. Not really a selling point, but it's also not a massive turn-off, so I don't care. Love the bottle though. Looks great on the shelf. I can imagine a lot of people which are more into aesthetics would really appreciate this. But anyway, on to the tasting notes. The nose initially to me is quite botanical. Quite kind of gin-esque, I guess. There's a sweet oakiness about it, but it's quite subtle. Getting some plum notes coming through, maybe a little bit of like apple and rhubarb. That rhubarb kind of leaning into that kind of botanical nose. Getting a nice kind of hazelnut praline. I don't remember how to pronounce that. A little bit of like a subtle nuttiness. I guess that's coming from those Oloroso casks. To go with that, a kind of nice Coca-Cola, like cola nut, kind of like wisps of Coca-Cola on the tail end of it. Overall, it is quite nice, but it does to me smell quite new-makey, quite botanical, quite spirity. Onto the palate. Immediately, right up front, herbaceous, gin-like, botanical, quite sweet, but it's quite hard to balance with the herbaceousness, which kind of knocks a lot of the sweetness out of it. Getting some honey, some apples. Somewhat Speyside-y, but it's not quite as sweet and as bright as you might find some of those Speysides. So cola, a little tiny bit chocolatey, like a very mild milk chocolate maybe. I'm rounding it off. Some more of that oak and, you know, some of those quite classic Oloroso notes, a little bit more Coca-Cola, a bit of a nuttiness coming through. The finish, again, quite botanical, quite ginny, quite spirity. I'm getting a nice kind of breath of menthol coming forward, although it is starting to sweeten up a bit now. To me, this is quite a two-dimensional whiskey from start to finish. What you get on the nose, you get on the palate, which is what you get on the finish. It does sweeten up, it does get a bit nuttier and a bit richer as you get towards the end of it. But this is not a whiskey that I would go for. At £35, it's okay. I'm just not their target market. So to be fair, on paper, this is not a whiskey I would go for. It's a 40% blended whiskey. Now that doesn't inherently mean it's bad, but there are not many £35 blended Scotch whiskies that I would just take a punt on, especially having no information about it beforehand. Maybe it's not had enough time in that Oloroso cask for those flavours to mellow out a bit, to knock some of that botanical note off the front end of it. Maybe the cask just isn't that active. Maybe in this instance this was a bad batch. To me this tastes a lot like it's had maybe some slightly more mature spirit mixed in with something that is just a little bit too young. Maybe some slightly too young grain spirit maybe, because I know a lot of the time young grain spirits can impart some of that botanical that kind of those botanical flavours. But that's not what makes this whiskey interesting. They reached out to me after I'd had the bottle and they said, what did I think? And I had a very honest phone call with a lady called Katie, who is awesome. And she said, I mean, everyone there is very, very passionate about making whiskey. And I spoke to Katie for a bit and she said, well, why don't you come down and try our new make spirit? Now, as you all know, I'm a huge fan of new make spirit. I love new make spirit. You can't hide behind new make spirit. If you're putting your new make spirit out there, I mean, that's the fingerprint of your distillery. That's, you know, you can put the same spirit into the same casks. You're going to have some variation, but different spirits from different distilleries are always going to behave completely differently in those casks. Your new make spirit is your fingerprint. Bad new make spirit, you can't, there's only so much you could do with it in a cask to make it palatable. Good new make spirit is going to carry very, very well into pretty much whatever you put it in. So anyway, I went down to the distillery today. In fact, it was literally a couple of hours ago. Now, I wasn't going to review this because I do not think that this was a positive review to put out on something which, as this is not their spirit. They have not distilled this. This is spirit that they've sourced and casked and then bottled themselves. I do not think that this is representative because, I mean, I tried the gin. The gin's lovely. I tried the vodka. The vodka's great. I used to be a big gin drinker and I genuinely really, really like their gin. Not been a huge vodka drinker, but I would happily sit there and drink their vodka neat. It was wonderful. But their new make spirit is probably one of the best new make spirits I have ever tasted. I've got a collection of probably 12 or so new make spirits up there in total, and this could be the best I've ever tasted of the lot. It was juicy, it was sweet, it was bright. I mean, I tasted it when it was up at its full strength. It was delicious. That for me is incredibly exciting. This is not exciting. This is not representative of them as a distillery. This is not their fingerprint. Why they put this out, I don't know. Maybe they wanted to get to the whiskey market ASAP, start doing some kind of developing their brand. Maybe they just wanted a third. They've got the gin, they've got the vodka. They wanted to add whiskey to that list. Their distillery is beautiful. The location is incredible. The stills are stunning. The place, walking in there is like a whiskey maker's playground. From what I understand, it's mostly automated, as in there's a lot of automation. Obviously, making whiskey is still a fairly manual process, but there's a huge amount of automation which offers consistency between batches. Everything is in one big room. You've got fermenters, you've got it's grain to glass on site, and maltings on site. It's surrounded by fields. This is such a promising distillery. To me, this is not a promising liquid. The new make that I tried earlier was incredible. Now, Katie very kindly showed me, I mean, as we say, I'm a massive fan of weird casks and stuff. Katie very kindly took me into one of their warehouses. So it's a small warehouse they've got on site. And walking around in there, every cask you can think of, and casks that I've never heard of before. I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to ruin the surprise for anyone, but literally any cask you can think of, they've got in there. Everywhere you look, weird casks full of their spirit. I am incredibly excited to see what they come up with. They're obviously passionate about making whiskey. You don't build a facility like that, a whiskey maker's playground. You don't buy all of those casks unless you're passionate and you're up for experimentation. This is a 21st century distillery that hopefully are going to be making a modern whiskey for modern whiskey drinkers, which, you know, hopefully we'll get those numbers, that 46% and above. We'll get that unchill filtered, we'll get that natural colour, we'll get those interesting casks and experimentation. I just hope that as a distillery they don't allow this to define what they can do. And the day that they put their new make, because I asked them, when are you going to sell your new make? So to them, the day that you put your new make up for sale, I want an email, because I will go down there and I will buy bottles of the stuff. And I highly implore anyone, if you get a chance, go and visit the distillery, call them up and say, I want to come and try your new make. Tell them you've seen this video. Tell Katie that you've seen this video and that I told you to go and try their new make. It is exceptional. Highly recommend. I really feel like this is a distillery to keep your eyes on. I have a feeling that if that new make is anything to go by, they're going to be producing some incredible stuff in the coming years. But anyway, that's enough from me. Thank you all very much for watching. If you've liked this video, please do click the like button down below. And if you'd like to support the channel, please do consider subscribing. Let me know in the comments if you've tried this and what your thoughts are. And if there are any new distilleries around that you think I should check out. But on that note, Slanjavar.